flash the times that we had, got the pictures to prove the good and the bad. It's just what we did, and now nothing's changed. They're still falling in love at the home game.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of A Charge to Keep. Rather unfortunate news to have here on the podcast, but I wanted to get an episode out for you guys as there's been some work going on behind the scenes. I didn't want to make any announcements or anything until we were able to confirm everything and see if there was going to be a contingency plan. Anyway, this is the pregame show that we have on Thursdays before our Friday night games. But unfortunately, there will be no football game for Rio Hondo Prep this week. Glendale High School has canceled the game. They notified Rio on Wednesday. I'm not sure how it all went down. I have not been informed of the reasoning, but you can probably use your imagination and come up with something. So rather unfortunate that we have schools that make commitments to play a game and then do not fulfill them. And just the nature of the business, I guess, with other schools playing games and others having schedules. There's not too many teams to just have an open week and want to play on 2 days' notice. Rio, the administration, they tried as best they could, reached out to a lot of teams to see who had lost a game as well, had a game canceled last minute here in week 6, but it just didn't work out. So unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have an 8-game season for the Cares. It will give them a chance to heal up, which is nice. But I'm rather disappointed. I know a lot of other people are disappointed. I heard from some fans already reaching out to me who had already bought tickets, who had already were planning on coming down from pretty far away. So with the whole homecoming thing added to it, that environment, that experience, the alumni coming together and fans and everything, just rather disappointing and upsetting. And I'm going to try not to dwell too much on it. I've been upset. Everyone's upset. Everyone's disappointed. The boys get to play one less game this year. And especially with it being homecoming, that just upsets everything. So I do want to say that I have spoke to some people down at Rio, and there will in fact still be a homecoming ceremony. There has been too much gone into it really to cancel it or to move it to another game. So there will be a ceremony still on Friday night at 8:00 if you're in the area and you want to go support the young ladies of Rio Hondo Prep who, probably had their best gowns picked out and everything. And the people involved in the homecoming ceremony, they put a lot of work into the skits and just putting it all together. So it's still going to happen on Friday, September 30th at 8:00 from what I was told. There'll be nachos and baked goods for sale. So come down, get out of the house, get a bite to eat, and go about your weekend, I guess. So just disappointment all around. I don't know what to say. I don't have much information. It's just the school cancels last minute. There's not much you can do about it. So I do know that the JVs, I think, we're playing today against the Bishop Amat team. I think that's how it happened. I know Rio reached out to some schools, but again, these things are scheduled months in advance, and to throw together an opponent at last minute. I mean, it happened a lot during the COVID year, or, when the lockdowns, whatever was going on, when teams were canceling last minute and playing each other, even at the college level. So I thought we were done with all that. I was hoping we were through it all and we could just commit to each other and play football games. But unfortunately, we can't. Glendale High School, the LA Unified, I believe they're in LA Unified. So I'm not going to dwell too much on it. I'm not here to bash other people or anything like that. There's just frustration. I'm speaking for everyone, I think, in the fact that there won't be a Friday night football game this week. And next week is science camp for Rio. So they have that built-in bye week really to have a 9-game season. And as far as scheduling a game at the end of that week is rather unlikely and probably not a great idea anyway, since you're not even practicing. Your kids are up at science camp, and I don't know, it's just the way the schedules go sometimes. It doesn't work out. So frustration on my end and for everyone else involved. The kids work so hard. The coaches put in so much time, the parents, the team dinners, just everything. When something like this happens, I mean, it's not devastation or anything, but still, for us to put so much time and effort into this and schedule and plan our Friday nights or Thursday, whenever the games are, you're upset and you're mad. And I don't know if this will be a real thing moving forward, if this is a possibility to happen again. I sure hope not. Does it change who maybe you plan on scheduling in the future? Is this a public school thing? Is this a private school? I don't know. I don't know what the answers are. I'm just kind of venting to you guys here. I had promised you guys a pregame show on Thursday tonight. And I promised to have a guest on that I've already recorded with, and I want to fulfill that promise. I want to fulfill my obligation and my commitments. Pun completely intended there. So today you guys will be hearing from John Lee from the class of 1992 as our guest of the week. There will be no game recap on Sunday because there's no game to recap. And then next week is the bye week. The kids will be at science camp. Originally, I wasn't going to do a game week, a pregame show or a Sunday show, because we're just going to take the week off and enjoy it and just relax, right? But what I think I will do now is and you guys are going to have to look on social media and stay updated for me here. What I think I'm going to do is release a show like this next week on Thursday, pregame show, not a pregame show, but just kind of a bye week special where we'll have a guest on, someone that it'll be maybe a longer conversation than normal, and just talk Rio Hondo football. There's no game to talk about or prepare for, but we can just make up, I guess, for lost time, if you will, make up for us not being able to recap a game. We'll try to include an interview. And I've already recorded some of these. Truth be told, I try to stockpile a few with the alumni so that I can just release them in a timely manner. That's the beauty of podcasting. So I have a few already in the bank ready to go that I am going to utilize and let out here for you guys. You're going to hear from John Lee today. I won't share with you who else I recorded with, just to keep it a mystery. And when you see the names, I want you guys to be excited and be, oh, wow, yeah, can't wait to hear those. So today you'll hear from John Lee. We'll talk some RHP football to help ease our frustration, to help. It's a tall task for John. Him and I have already recorded, obviously, this conversation that you guys will hear. But hopefully this will ease some wounds, if you will, here on a Thursday evening, and make it so that you're looking forward to not next week's game, but the game in 2 weeks, where league play will be starting in the Gold Coast League. The Gold Coast League, consisting of Viewpoint, Campbell Hall, and Brentwood. Those are the next 3 opponents for Rio. You got to finish top 2 out of those games, top 2 of those 4 teams to guarantee yourself a playoff spot. So what we're going to do too, I think next week, is we will look at the scores of the Gold Coast League, kind of how they're doing. Right now, Viewpoint is 0-5 currently. That is Rio's next opponent. I will look to see who they are playing here this weekend, if in fact they do have a game. Yes, they do have a game this Friday night. Viewpoint will be playing Artesia High School, a home game for them, and then they will start their stretch of Gold Coast League games. So Viewpoint is 0-5, going up against a big public school program there in Artesia. And as far as Campbell Hall goes, Campbell Hall and Brentwood are really going to be the big test for Rio. Campbell Hall is currently 6-0, so they're riding high. And let's see, Campbell Hall upcoming. Let's see, Campbell Hall 6-0. They beat Pauley by quite a few touchdowns. I think we touched on that already. But Campbell Hall this weekend will be playing at St. Anthony down in Huntington Beach, an away game. St. Anthony is 2-3, and Campbell Hall, as I mentioned, is 6-0. So Campbell Hall has St. Anthony, and then the 3 remaining league games, much like Rio does. They do have a bye the week before Rio, on week 9, so that'll be significant, I think, for Campbell Hall. Not only can they scout in person probably, but they can also rest up for the big game with Rio Hondo for the finale of the 2022 season. And then finally, Brentwood, they're having a heck of a year. They are currently, 5-1. They are playing this Friday against Chaffey out in Ontario. I promise you, the way Chaffey plays football, I've refereed a lot of their games. That will be quite a physical game. They run a double wing, double tight end, 11 guys in a cloud of dust. They try to make their games like 90 minutes long. And the Brentwood won't see the ball much because it's like 3 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards for Chaffey High School, at least in many years past. So Brentwood will have their hands full this week, and then they will jump into Brentwood will have a bye, and then they will play their Gold Coast league schedule. They'll open with Campbell Hall on the 14th, and then Rio Hondo on the 21st, and close their season out with Viewpoint on the 28th. So that's kind of a look ahead for us. Rio is going to go against. They're going to see 2 weeks from Friday, Thursday. If you remember, the Viewpoint game did get moved to Rio Hondo Prep to Care Park, on Thursday, the 13th. That is the next time we will see Rio Hondo Prep in action. It will be a home game. It was originally an away game, but it will be a home game. Rio does have Brentwood at home on the 21st, and they have Campbell Hall on the road on the 28th in the season finale. And what could be up a game, that will have a playoff spot on the line. So that is the future of Rio Hondo Prep football. I know everyone's mad about the present. I am too. This happened again last year, and I think a couple years ago, but for it to happen this year in 2022, when things are moving along just fine, it's disappointing. So that's what's ahead. Rio's got to get healthy right now. They got to get ready to rock and roll, rest up, heal up. There were some injuries again in that Savannah game last week. So this, I don't know. You got to look at this with as an opportunity to get healthy, to maybe get away from football a little bit, which is always good, and then get back on track and ready to finish up this thing, the regular season, that is, and stay consistent. Hopefully win your next 3 or at least a couple out of 3 and go into the playoffs riding high. So the future's still bright for Rio Hondo. A lot of great things in the 5 games they've played. They're only going to play an 8-game season. I don't foresee them finding a way to get a 9th game in. It just is what it is, guys. So there's nothing much we can do about it. I had some thoughts originally. I had already recorded this podcast and talked about my memories of homecoming and the sights and sounds, really, the pomp and circumstance, of everything. But I don't know, the wind's kind of out of my sail right now in regards to that. I do remember the paint crew working on the field the night before, and the halftime being longer than the Super Bowl halftime, like 30 minutes or whatever. The skit, and there was a stretch of time there where Rio Hondo lost quite a bit. We were on a tough house of horrors. We couldn't win a homecoming game for the longest time. And my senior year, actually, we played our homecoming game at Monrovia High School because we didn't have a field. Most of our games were played at Duarte. We didn't have many home games, but we were road warriors that year. And for our homecoming, we played against Webb at Monrovia High. And I got hurt in the game, rolled up my ankle, and ended up not really being able to walk good the rest of the year, and couldn't. The playoff game was throwing passes on one leg, and it was tough, man, to just a painful memories, really. But I do remember some cool things about homecoming, and the freshmen and sophomores, us mere mortals who only played JV football when we were freshmen, not quite like the studs we have now. We'd have to put suits on after our JV game, and escort the girls arm in arm at the homecoming halftime show. The Santa Maria barbecue, that was rocking always at 4:00 or even earlier during our JV games. Going to homecoming, we didn't have a dance, but a homecoming like dinner type of banquet thing after the game, similar to inaugurals, but much shorter. And then a few years back, I think in the early 2000s, they said, hey, let's do this on a Sunday or something, not after a football game. Because as a kid, was the last thing you wanted to do, was, go put a suit on and try to act after you just let out all this aggression, vengeance, and then kind of, sit still, and then you'd rather go relax and eat some food and such. So there's some memories for me from RHP homecoming that won't be happening this year, at least not the homecoming game. But I do encourage you guys, if you would, man, get out there and to Care Park and honor and support the young ladies and everyone who puts so much time and effort into the homecoming. It'll probably be 30 minutes or whatever, and some snacks available. So my apologies to the young ladies and to everyone who put so much time in, and to people who have bought their tickets already and are ready to make Friday night really, really fun. We've learned to deal with disappointment here the past few years. Just another chapter, I guess we'll say, in the crazy world we live in. But yeah, I'm encouraged by the guys getting able to get some much needed rest and heal up, because again, there were some significant injuries on last Thursday's game with Savannah. And I want to, that brings me to a point, here on the podcast, I want to do a good job of giving you guys information and giving you access maybe to the program, much like any reporting would do, but to get you guys involved, right? Take you onto the field and on the sidelines and behind the scenes. But there's also, the matter of privacy as far as what injuries go. So there's not so much I can always tell you guys. I'm not even told a whole lot of things about, injuries and things. And we want to keep some things private. A young man has an injury, or we don't always want to speculate how serious something is, or, we don't know who's listening to this podcast either. Like, we don't want to give things away. So just for those of you that are kind of like, hey, tell me about how, a player's doing, or how bad was that injury? Like, that's not always things we're going to talk about here on the podcast, or post things. I give Clark and Kyle some info down on the sideline during the games. But we'll always try to tread lightly and be careful with those things too. So just a little insight into the insight of the program in going forward. So always, I think discretion is good, for some things, to keep people guessing, and, there's some things can remain mysterious. We don't need to know everything all the time, right? So anyway, what else? Before I get to John Lee, and it's kind of a bummer, he's coming on, just I don't know. I hope he gets you guys through this weekend, and you guys still listen to this podcast because you get to hear from someone like John Lee. And yeah, it's going to be a fun interview. I enjoyed talking with John. He's a great historian. I am proclaiming him, giving him the official title as president of our Oregon Alumni Force. You heard from Steve Almond on Sunday after the game last week, and Bill Ritter, my classmate and teammate, he lives up in the Portland area. These are big time alums from Rio Hondo Prep who are supporting and watching the program from afar. So we're not going to let the cancellation bum us out too much. We're going to move on, move forward. We're going to focus on the Gold Coast League action. We're going to get healthy and get back at it here in a couple weeks. And I was going to have a recap show, obviously Sunday. I'm not going to do that now, but I will have a show, I think, for you guys next week in the middle of the bye week, just to get you guys through a tough stretch there with no RHP football. Let's at least have a conversation with a member of the alumni. And then, of course, the week after that, when we host Viewpoint on the Thursday, we'll get back in the swing of things. We'll get the pregame show on Wednesday night, 24 hours before kickoff. We'll have the game, of course, God willing. And then Sunday, we'll have the recap show. That is the updated schedule of events. I want to give a huge thank you to everyone out there who subscribed to the YouTube channel. I was sitting at like 79 subscriptions, and I wanted to get to 100 because there's a few things I can do with the channel in the future if I do hit that 100 mark. So we surpassed that on Wednesday, courtesy of so many people that got involved and dove into it. So thank you. Let's keep the subscriptions going. All it is it's just clicking a button. It doesn't charge you anything. It just means you're following the podcast on YouTube. And for those of you that have done so already on social media, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts, we're there. So however you listen to the podcast, however you support the podcast, thank you very much. And I think this is a good time, if you will, where we can listen to or hear from you guys. Send me your email. Send me those voice messages that I always put in the episode notes there. I would love to hear from you guys, much like a caller calling into a show. I know people are mad right now, so maybe that's not a good time to talk about, to have those conversations. But send me a voice message. It's a 1 minute limit. You just talk into your phone, just like you're leaving a voice message. I can hear it, have it played, or send me an email at chargetokeeppod gmail.com, and I can read those. Text me, do whatever you need to do for to stay in touch with me here on the Charge to Keep podcast. No game this week, but we're not going to let that take the wind out of our sails too much. We still got a lot of sailing left. Is that all right to say? I don't know. Anyway, let's move forward, and we're going to bring on our originally scheduled guests today to give you guys something at least to get you through the weekend. Rio Hondo Prep football related. We're going to be joined now by John Lee, or you're going to hear my interview with John Lee that I recorded a little while back. John is up in Oregon, just outside of Eugene, not too far from his brother-in-law, Steve Almond, who you heard on last Sunday's episode. And John is a big fan. He's a CIF champion in 1990, loves his Rio Hondo heritage, and still continues to take the lessons he learned 30 years ago when he graduated high school into his career and his family life and everything else. So he watches almost every Friday night, and he had some kind words to say about the team, and just much love and support here on the Charge to Keep podcast with John Lee. So you're going to hear from him now. Sit back, relax, and enjoy it whenever you're listening to. Maybe it's Friday at 7:00 and you're listening to this on the way to go watch the homecoming ceremony at 8:00. I don't know, but whenever you listen to this, I know you will enjoy it. Let's now bring on John Lee, or play the interview I had with him, I should say, from earlier in the week. Here he is, Mr. John Lee from the class of 1992. Okay, I am now joined by John Lee from the class of 1992. He lives up in Cresswell, Oregon, just outside of Eugene. He's a CIF champion in 1990 and a big fan of Rio football. What's going on, John?
Nothing much. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
John, I've had you on before on the Get Home Safe podcast, but I started this new adventure here in the summer, being just Rio Hondo football. What do you think of the podcast so far?
I'm enjoying it. I think part of what I have enjoyed, other than just, I like having some of the guys that I didn't get to see play. Listen to was it Colby, the quarterback?
Mm-hmm.
So my dad's not up visiting. He's over visiting from Idaho, and so. Last night after I listened to that podcast, we went back and started looking at some old videos and saw one of his highlight videos. And it's like, man, that'd have been fun to watch him in person. So yeah.
Absolutely. I've really enjoyed on the Sunday episodes last year I did, on the Get Home Safe, I did coach, player, and then that was it. I've kind of liked bringing on the alumni guys for a few minutes to kind of get the player, the present, right, and then the past back to back. I think it kind of works.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've enjoyed it.
John, you played football a long time ago at Rio, as most of us could say. The CIF champions in 1990, you guys dominated really from start to finish. What do you remember most about that team, and kind of what was your role with that ball club?
So I think the thing that I remember most about that team was number one, everybody was hyper competitive. To some degree, I think practices were more competitive than the games. And it started with, honestly, some of the leaders on that team, Rick Johnson, Todd Carson, that senior class, John Carrillo, Jeff Valdez, Dave Joe. Those guys were not going to allow us to be anything but our best. So it was a pleasure to play with those individuals, and that's what I remember about that. And there was a cohesiveness on that team where everybody knew their role, what to do, when to do it. I actually remember a game. I think it was Pauley. No, it was the championship game. It was a championship game. The Faith Baptist came out in a different formation than they had run previously. And I want to say it was like the third or fourth game of the season. We had played another team that ran that exact same formation. So it had been, 5-6 weeks since we'd practiced for that. But I remember Dave Joe calling out the defensive formation. everybody snapped to, jumped right into it, stuffed the play, and they never went back to it the rest of the game. So it was that cohesiveness and the preparedness that I remember most about that team. So my role was I was a starting corner, and then back up to a variety of things offensively. I was backup tight end, did that a few times, center a little bit, typical Rio fashion,
Yeah.
I was probably $165, but snapping the ball, played tight end for a minute or two, ran the ball occasionally, not super often, but on occasion, and platooned at punt returner with Jeff Fairley.
Wow. Just Swiss Army knife, John Lee, just doing it all. That's cool. Let me get your comments on this, as a RHP historian. I've talked about a lot of great RHP teams, but as far as most dominant team, I think the 1982 and you guys in 90 probably could go down as two of the most dominant RHP teams, just from what I've heard about the 82 team. But I don't know, where do you think you guys fit in there?
I would agree with that. I would add, there was a team a few years after, I want to say like 5 years, I think it was about 5 years after, it was Dave Ramos, Jay Lett, Josh Krieger, Marcelo Taglioni, that group of guys. I'm trying to remember, but I don't think they had a game that I mean, they blew everybody out. So I would put them in that mix as well.
That was the 96 team, I believe, the beginning of a three-peat right after they had lost the final by 2 points in 95. Yeah, Dave Ramos, Jason Ramos, Jacob Blake. I mean, just so many great. You're right. There was a time there in Rio, and that's a big reason we ended up making the jump to 11-man eventually, because 8-man was starting to get so just watered down. But it's not to take away from anything those guys did at all. John, what are your thoughts on the current team? How many games have you been able to watch? I mean, what are some of your thoughts from up in Oregon, looking down here at the current Rio Hondo Cares?
It's I think what I have. So I've watched three of the 4 games so far. I haven't been able to catch any of them live, but I get that sideline view from. Is it Dave Guerrero that's filming those?
Yes.
Which one of the best players I ever saw. I enjoyed watching him when I was a young buck back in the day. But so I've watched 3 of the 4. And so quick question, number 31, who is that?
Noah Pinaneri, freshman.
Okay. He's a freshman?
Yeah.
Okay. I love watching him run the ball. That guy's got a future. He is in the games that I've watched, I love watching him. And some of the cuts that he makes are so, it's weird. It kind of reminds me of Marcus Allen back in the day.
Whoa. Where
it's not a direct, he's not turning left, turning right. It's just this, he just slithers through the line and through the secondary. Never takes a shot straight on.
He was on our first game recap against after the El Monte game, and he talked about being a guy who's been in mixed martial arts for quite some time, Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. Okay. He still does it and competes, so you could see that's definitely kind of helped him out in his football game.
Yeah, no, he's fun to watch run the ball. But yeah, in the 3 games that I've watched, I don't think I've seen him take a direct hit. He's able to, like I said, kind of like Marcus Allen, where he just slithers through and people glance, they get him. Of course, he's not running the end zone every time, but man, yeah, he's fun to watch.
Little guy, man, guy. There's so many. I mean, almost anyone you can mention, you'd be like, yeah, it's a freshman. Oh, that's a freshman. It's just like this whole team. It's almost like a JV team out there with a few, and no knock on them, but just as far as their ages go, it's a young group of guys with some obviously established veterans.
And so there's from a senior standpoint, there's 4 guys that get playing time, correct?
Yes.
So on the offensive line, is the center, is he a freshman too?
Yes. Elijah Gavia.
Man, he's going to be a beast.
5'10", 230 right now. And pretty good shape for that size as well, I must say. He starts us off with that offensive line, and yeah, he's impressive to watch.
Yeah. Yep. Program's in good hands for the next few years, looks like.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's cool you still tune in, John. Why? I mean, if someone were to walk by you and you're watching your high school team that 30 years ago or whatever, when you last played there, if someone were to walk by and say, "Hey, why are you watching that?" Like, that's why I tried to promote this and preach this to all of our alumni. Hey, support these guys. But if you were to answer a perfectly good stranger, it'd be like, "Hey, why are you watching your high school on video from a few thousand miles away when you haven't been a part of it since 30 years ago?" What would be your explanation?
Part of it is nostalgia. Such a wonderful time in my life, that brotherhood. And I think part of it is because I didn't show up to high school and start playing ball. I got to watch, growing up, I got to watch the guys play. And so there was this, you inherit this sense of, somebody hands you the keys to their car, so to speak. It's like it belonged to the guys before me. And so I get to come in and wear their jersey now, and I get to be grafted into this brotherhood. And in the same way now, they're carrying that mantle and taking it forward. So I think that's the part that I enjoy about it is, it's welcoming the next crop of alumni eventually. And, it's less about football and more about the brotherhood. Yes, the football is, of course, we take pride in doing it right, in, of course, winning. It's a winning tradition. But it's the manner in which it's done. I like the insignia behind you. It's a charge to keep. We are not, this program doesn't belong to me individually. It doesn't belong to the current players individually. It belongs to all of us. And we should carry a sense of awe and respect for those that have gone before us, and then support those that are currently doing it now. That's what I enjoy about it. And I hope the guys that are playing now feel that, I say burden, but it's not a heavy burden. It's something that I think you should welcome, because it'll make you work harder. It'll make you respect the game. You're not out there for your own glory per se. You're out there for the uniform.
Mm-hmm. It is a privilege to play for Rio Hondo and to have once played for Rio Hondo. And I think these guys understand that. They hear it all the time here on the podcast. The coaches do a great job as far as filling them in on, hey, you have a responsibility to carry on the torch here. Nothing is about you. This is about the logo, that crest that you wear on your helmets. And
Right.
So, yeah, I couldn't have said it better there myself. John, you were kind of along the same time, I think, not classmates, but head coach Mark Carson. I want to say, was he like a sophomore, maybe when you were a senior or something like that? What are your memories of Coach Carson, and is it cool seeing him, at the helm these days?
Yeah, so he was a class below me, and it's funny, my senior year, junior year we steamrolled. Senior year, obviously, we lost a bunch of just fantastic players. So we struggled a little bit my senior year. And I remember on the summer trip beforehand, I think it was Mike Whiteside, Jeff Fairley, my brother Bill, and myself all went to, I think it was Mr. Horton, and we were lobbying that we needed to get some more, because Mark was small. Mark was a small guy. But we lobbied to have Mark, Tim Lunny, and I think it was Anthony Irvin moved up to varsity during the summer so that they could get, the reps and the practices before we got to the season. And I don't remember exactly why, but they weren't moved up at least during the summer. And then of course, midway through the season, they start coming. We're like, yeah, see, we told you these dudes are ballers. So, 'cause I remember Tim was not a big guy in high school either, but man, when he hit somebody, you could feel it. So, but Mark, the thing I remember about Mark was he played quarterback, so he had that mentality of running the show even back then. He reminded me of if you ever watched him play, was Jim Harbaugh.
Ooh.
So
yeah,
that's what he looked like. He looked like that, and he just kind of behaved like that back there. But yeah, Mark was the quarterback. That was his mentality. So it doesn't surprise me that he's running the show now.
Yeah, he's got such a good mind, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But I mean, when he became an assistant in high school, I was a freshman, and he came into high school and he was just helping out with the JVs. He was a special teams guy, so we kicked field goals for hours after practice. And anything Mark has done or latched onto, he eventually became the defensive guy, and then pretty much has taken the reins for a while here, and now officially being the head coach. He gives his heart and soul into this program. And I can honestly say that Rio Hondo football is in great hands, and it's got to be cool for you, one of your former teammates running the show now.
Yeah, not only a former teammate, but a neighbor, a guy that I grew up with. And, so yeah.
That's cool.
Carson family, love them.
What's you watched the Poly game recently, and your dad was up there, so you guys got to watch that together. What were your thoughts on that evening?
I was surprised at how easily we were able to handle Poly. And I mean, I don't mind, blowing Poly out, but you always kind of want, I enjoyed the Rose Bowl game a little more. Just because it feels like it should be a close game with Poly. So the blowouts are good. Letting them know who's the top dog is always nice. But you always want for a little competitive game.
Yeah, it's been I would say pretty one-sided in the 11-man era. There was a stretch where Poly did win 3 in a row not too long ago, but Rio's now on a 4-game winning streak. They won 6 in a row at one point, kind of around Colby Rivera's time that you were talking about earlier. In 8-man, it was much closer, and I think it even goes back to 6-man. What were some of your memories? Didn't Poly beat you guys in like a semifinal or something?
Yeah, it was my sophomore year, and we beat them earlier in the year, but then we played them in the playoff semifinal game. They kicked a 43-yard field goal to win the game. So yeah, that was a heartbreaker. But I think that loss was part of the motivation for coming into the next season, and how we kind of steamrolled. I mean, obviously we're a year older and everybody's physically a little bit better, but people put in a lot of work during that next summer. I remember, I think it was Rick, Jeff Farrelly, and Mike Whiteside worked out with, I can't remember his first name. Last name was Lazada, and he was I don't know if he was doing bodybuilding or what, but man, he had a legit full gym in his garage, and those guys put in a lot of work in that garage. I remember Todd Carson and I were doing, 2 to 3 hours every day of doing some drills and trying to help Todd increase his foot speed, and my stamina. We balanced each other out that way.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
I don't know how much it helped Todd, but
oh yeah, Todd with that quick twitch guy, not not fast foot speed, but man, he was quick with everything he ever did. That is awesome. If I don't know, John, if you know when you watch this team from so far away, I mean, what you've seen Rio football evolve over the years. You watched it as a kid, you played it in high school, you've seen it after high school, and now watching it from afar. What would you say about the program? I kind of touched on this with you talking to people about why you watch, but I don't know, as we kind of wrap it up here soon, why is Rio football so special? I mean, you're in a successful career yourself. Do you ever find the elements that you learned or the philosophies you learned playing football at Rio is kind of helpful in your everyday life?
Very much so, and I think a part of it also is just the familial aspect of it, from fundraisers and you look at the sidelines. It's one of the things that I've noticed. I look at the sideline and it's like, man, it's alumni everywhere, it's families everywhere, it's people that don't even have kids in the program anymore that are still coming and watching. And so there's the support behind it. It has that small town flavor to it where everybody comes out and supports the current group of guys. And so that even people that didn't necessarily play are still very connected to the program. And that is something that I have tried to take into my career, and with the people that I manage. I recently changed careers, and I have the people that I manage now are mostly all in their early 20s. I manage gyms, we call them clubs because they got hot tubs and saunas and steam rooms and all that stuff. But anyway, they're gyms. But a lot of the people that I manage now are in their 20s. And so my whole thing to them is, how can I help you to be better and how to grow? What's the next step? What's the next level? And that's something about the program that I look at Rio Hondo and say, yes, we're watching individuals play football, but the goal is really preparation for what's next. And we're developing these individuals into something greater, to carry themselves with a sense of pride, to, do their very best, to put in the work, and to support the guy on the left and the guy on the right. So I think that's the takeaway.
Yeah, for sure. Everyone I talk to, no matter what industry they're in, it's very similar. All the lessons from playing football at Rio and just stuff like that, and other sports too. But this is primarily, football podcast. John, I know you're a busy man. Before I let you go, do you have any other questions for me or regarding Rio football? Anything else you wanted to mention?
I don't think so. I've really enjoyed when you've had the opposing coaches on. Have you? Is that something we're going to see more of? I've really enjoyed that aspect.
I'm going to try, I had a connection or a relation,
Yes.
I knew Coach Burns. I knew a friend. I knew a friend who knew of Coach Marr from Poly. And then I asked Mark, they've played each other so many times with Boron. I just said, hey, what do you think of this guy? Would he come on? And he was willing to do it. So sometimes you just got to ask. It's just me having enough courage to do so. And I don't really know these other teams. But I don't know. I might do so. I might reach out to some of the teams in the future. Why is it such an attractive feature of the podcast?
I think it's the outsider's perspective. When people look at Rio Hondo Prep, what do they see? I really appreciate the Boron coach, some of the things he had to say, and so I think you always wonder, it's like, okay, when people see, because kind of like Coach Smoke from Poly last year, from his perspective, okay, well, what do Rio Hondo people think of Poly? Is like, well, I had some pretty strong opinions, and then I listened to him. I was like, okay, I guess I can respect Poly. I guess.
I believe the exact message you sent me was, thank you. Thank you so much for taking away my perfectly healthy hatred of Pasadena Poly by having Coach Smoke on. I believe that it's something along those lines is what you told me.
It might have been. I don't recall exactly, but I think,
We
I
go
think,
back to the tape.
I think it was a direct quote. Yeah.
Yeah. and it was cool, man. Like, cause there's people we want to compete against and everything, but there's some great people in this game, and the other teams are fighting hard, just like our guys are. And to me,
Right.
it just brings it all together. And there's plenty of people we really, want to beat and are on the outside, but that's a minority, 10% really. It's
Right.
90% of people you deal with that are just competing and trying to win games like we are.
Right. Exactly. You got your Salesians out there, but for the most part, they're more like the Follies.
Oh man, he went there. I love it. Yeah, I think a lot of people would agree with that. But yeah, it's been cool. And like you're right, the outside perspective, because we can talk all we want within, but it's always about our honestly, it's about the representation. Are we as Rio representing? And then to hear that from the outside world, it's like, okay, what we've been doing, what we've been striving for is actually something we're achieving.
Right. Right. Stay the course. We're doing the right thing. We're doing it the right way. Continue on, and don't compromise the way that we're approaching it, because if we have the respect of the opponents, it's worth doing.
Yeah, and sometimes when you don't, like when Elmani takes the field and starts laughing at us, then we can earn that respect after four quarters, hopefully. Hey, John, thank you so much for doing this. You're a proud alum, and I think I'm gonna claim you. Steve Almond and Bill Ritter might not like that. I'm gonna name you president of our Oregon booster fan base. Your brother-in-law Steve Almond and my good teammate Bill Ritter are big fans up there as well. They'll probably have some issues with that, but I'm making you the Oregon leader of our alumni up there.
I am the elder statesman.
That's right.
So I win by default there, even though Steve's got more white in his beard than I may ever have.
We're gonna have him on soon as well. But yeah, the Oregon faithful up there cheering on Rio Hondo. Rio Hondo fans all over the country and maybe even the world. But you're leading the way up there in Oregon. Thanks so much, John. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, Matt. Take care.
Thanks again, John Lee, for lifting our spirits a little bit here on this Thursday evening. Football is a funny thing. Sometimes you get punched in the mouth and you got to answer back. And so this is a little adversity for the team this year, for the season, but it is what it is. We'll move forward. We'll be okay. And you know what? Big things ahead. This team gets to rest for a couple of weeks. Hopefully they can get back to practicing after that and get sharp again. But for now, I guess it's maybe it's a blessing in disguise. We'll see. I know a lot of people are disappointed, but it's not what happens to you. It's how you respond, right? I think no matter what it is, whether it's stuff on the field, whether it's stuff off the field, things you can't control, you got to control the controllables. That's all you can do sometimes here on the Charge to Keep podcast and the 2022 football season. No game this week. There will not be a recap show on Sunday. I'm not sure Coach Carson will want to talk or not, but if there's any change, I will let you guys know on the social media platforms. Thank you again for the 100 subscribers. Let's keep that number climbing. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. And yeah, guys, no show this Sunday, but no game this week. That's a bummer. But next week, we will have another show for you in the middle of the week like this, probably on Thursday. Well, I will bring on a special member, not necessarily of the alumni. I have some other people in mind that I will have set up, but we'll get this thing done. We'll get you guys more access as much as we can, and we'll talk Rio football every chance we get here, whether it's once a week because there's no game, or we work through it, right? We'll go out, we'll look at the tablet, we'll see what the defense is doing, and we'll drop a new play, and we'll go from there. So, guys, thanks for tuning in on this somber occasion. But I think John Lee did a great job there lifting our spirits here on a difficult week. Week 6 for Rio. No football game. No football game next week because of the week 7 bye week. But 3 huge games coming up in a couple of weeks in Gold Coast League play. Can't wait for that. Let's heal up and be ready to go. Thanks again, guys. And thanks for tuning in to the Charge to Keep podcast, where we are always honoring tradition and building the future, and always making it a firm reminder to be humble in victory and gracious in defeat, because we always have a charge to keep.
A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save, and fit it for the sky. Arm me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live. And O thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to give.